All right, welcome back to Doodling with Purpose, the internet's only week-by-week guide to learning Ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, so you too could rob banks in ancient Egypt. Okay, well, I don't actually encourage you to do that. I guess you'd need a time machine to do that. All right, if you have a time machine, you're welcome to rob banks in ancient Egypt. We said last week that we were going to jump into the future tense, and I've saved this for last because, one, we wanted to go over the participles and the relative form, since the relative form does have a future tense to it, but also because future tense verbs are a little different because the clues in the form are not as strong. But we're going to go through them. All right, so future tense, obviously changing verbs from things like to hear to may that noun hear. May that noun see. May that noun love, like king, dog. May the dog give. May the king give. So the future tense has to do with may. All right, strong verbs, right? We've got our 4 classes of verbs. Well, we'll use the same verbs to illustrate it as we've been doing, and sejim, to hear, or hears, simply becomes in the future tense by adding a pronoun. And I'm going to continue using the pronoun for he, which is the horned viper, just for simplicity's sake, not because I'm sexist. All right, see, I used other pronouns because if you look back in the present tense for strong verb, it's the same thing. Add a pronoun. See, I used a different pronoun in that case. So yeah, you're going to have to wait until you get to doubling verbs before you start to see something unique happen in the future tense. And I'll further explain on that as we get towards the end. So for future tense, we don't just add a pronoun. First, we get rid of that pesky doubling. So yet another tense where the doubling verb does not double. That's one of your big clues, and it's going to be an important one for future tense. So after we've gotten rid of that double consonant, per the rule, we now add our pronoun. We're continuing to use the horned viper for he, simplicity's sake. All right, so if you recall in the present tense, doubling verbs maintain that double. So there you go. Now we have a difference between the present tense and the future tense when all you're doing is adding a pronoun. The pronoun that gets added in the present tense for the strong verb is exactly the same in future and present. So you can't use strong verbs as a clue to tell if you're in present or future. But you can use doubling verbs. So as I've been saying, not every tense can be used as that clue to figure out what tense you're in. Or I'm sorry, every verb type. You really need a whole paragraph is kind of at the end of the day. You need a large amount of text so that you can have multiple verbs in multiple sentences to figure out what tense you're in. It's not always going to be easy with one sentence. All right, let's continue through the other 2 verb types. So we have weak verbs. We've been using mer for loves, mr plus r, the open mouth. And what a shocker, add a pronoun, future tense, boom, just like strong verbs. So far, the only thing that's actually changed has been the doubling verb. Everything else is just getting a pronoun. And with extra weak verbs, we have a slight unique modification that, once again, here we have that pesky beginning R consonant in an extra weak verb, once again gets removed for the future tense. Hey, I before E except after C in neighbor and way. What can I say? Languages have exceptions. So no R, and then we're going to add our pronoun. So in other words, the overarching rule for future tense is add a pronoun. But since that's the same rule as present tense, it makes future tense a little bit harder to navigate. All right, so just as a reminder, let's just go through real quick the 4 different verb types and the changes we're going to make so that it's now in the may a noun or pronoun do something. Strong verbs, add your noun or pronoun. We're using the horned viper for simplicity. Could be king, could be cow, could be person, could be anybody, George Washington. All right, well, unless he had a time machine. Doubling verbs, lose that double, add your pronoun noun. Weak verbs, add your pronoun noun, just like present tense. And then extra weak verbs get a slight modification because we're going to get rid of that R if it's at the beginning. And then we're going to add, shocker, our pronoun. All right, so those are the rules, and you should be copying this down for your records. We're actually going to do a full review in 2 lessons of all the verb tenses now that we're getting through them. All right, so yeah, it's a little tough because present tense is basically the same modification. Add a pronoun or a noun. So for future tense, your biggest clue is going to come from your doubling verbs. The fact that the double verbs lose that extra consonant and gain the pronoun. So that's your key, which, yeah, that's not much. That's not much to go on because 3 of the other tenses look very similar to other 3 verb forms are very similar in structure. So what future has, though, is it's surrounded. There's phrases that go into future tense that also act as clues. And what these phrases are is what we're going to get into next week. All right, so we're breaking this up into very digestible segments. So that was basic future tense, and next week we will get into the phrases that also help you know you're in future tense. Thanks for watching, thanks for liking, and I'll see you guys next week.